Hi everyone, I'm Gary. Now, last episode I talked about dungeon design. I spoke about my own creation, the Barrow of Balagrim. What I didn't do in that video, however, was show you how I go about mapping a dungeon, cartographically speaking. Now, I need to preface this video by saying I'm not an artist, I don't have any kind of artistic training, but I do think that quite clearly there are some things that you should consider when you are drawing your own encounter locations, your own maps for your adventures, in order to make sure that that map is usable and useful for both you and your players. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to mapping this barrow. So first of all, I do all my drawing in one of these gridded notebooks. You can see my previous dungeons and stuff that I've been working on, for the modules and just my home game over the last couple of weeks and months. So just turn to a new page, and I like this because it's square grid, it's not isometric, and I just start by using a pencil to just map out the actual outline of the dungeon. It's just useful to start in pencil because you can go over it, but also it just means that you can change any mistakes that you make and quite easily kind of edit those out. And all I'm doing right now is just doing the outlines. I usually save the features of a particular room until later, but as I'm going through this, I'm already starting to consider what I use these rooms for. They're not sort of totally random, actually. As I do it, every single one has its final function in mind. Now, I actually said this when I did my how to paint miniatures video. You can see that if you click in the top right now. But I often like to listen to an audiobook or something else while doing this because it's just a really, really good opportunity to kind of consume a bit more kind of fiction or maybe listen to a podcast. Now you can see that on the right hand side, I'm drawing the cave, and I decided that I wanted to put the river in at the beginning because it just give me a bit of a better sense of where that river needed to go and how it was going to use the space. Now, I did actually add a couple of sarcophagi to this room, more as a reminder for what I was doing it for, because I was having to do this in several sittings. And then I'm also trying to consider where the loops are going to be and how these different rooms are going to connect up. And that's the initial sketch done. Now, I just took an ordinary pen, and then I just started to ink up the actual outline of the dungeon. This is just the beginning. It's just doing the walls and maybe the doors. I'm still not drawing features. Now I realized pretty quickly when doing this that this pen was on the verge of dying on me, so I went and swapped to a drawing pen. Um, because I need the and you need the doors and the outlines to kind of stand out really, really, really clearly. So all I'm doing is just tracing all the way around what I've already done. Now the layout is set. I'm just filling it in. I actually decided here that I'd add an extra room because I wanted to show a secret room in this dungeon. Because it's an example dungeon and it's a dungeon for introductory players, I thought it makes sense to add a secret room. So I added one on the left-hand side of that kind of sarcophagus room. And again, I did add some features to this room, the Sentinel room, because again, I'm trying to figure out exactly how this goes together. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side, I've actually filled in that area now. I've kind of sealed it off. There's a bit of the map that's kind of like all the way looped around. And I'm just working on that cave a little bit. But then what I'm going to go do is I decided to start doing a little bit of hatching on this wall. All the external walls that lead into rock need to be hatched. And the reason for that is that it just makes it clearer for the game master. It improves the readability of the map. So I have a particular way of doing hatching. I do lots of like little lines, and then I fill it in with dots. It also means that when I'm playing on a VTT and I have fog settings on, that I actually, if I accidentally reveal too much, it doesn't really matter. You'll actually notice I actually make a mistake. But the area where the secret room is, I add hatching on the other side of the secret door. So then if it were to accidentally slightly over reveal too much when setting up my VTT, which I do quite a lot, it just means that the players don't see anything other than the kind of like the hatching beyond. They don't realize automatically that it's a secret door. And then I go back and I like to do break up the hatching because it takes so long and it's quite boring. Um, so I carry on outlining all the doors and then I'm going to do all the hatching together at the end. And there we have it. The entirety of the outlining is done, the initial inking. And now, and the hatching's done. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to add features to the rooms. Now, as I said, everything in this dungeon, I've already decided what it's going to be. So I start by drawing the river in the cave system that's going to flow through, just because it's kind of terrain still. And I had a small island. Go back with a thinner pen and just add those lines there, which help that water read as water a little bit more clearly. I decided to break up that spider cave with another area as well, just to, if we do get into a fight there, it's a little bit more interesting. Just add a bit of cobwebbing. All it does is really, really it makes it really clear to anyone looking at this map that, oh, this is where the spiders live. And then I'm going to use a slightly thicker pen. And all I do here is when I scan this in, I'm going to get rid of the grid, but actually I want a grid in certain parts of the map. So because this is for rough caving, I'm just going to add a little bit of a grid by just putting across where the two kind of like lines meet, and then very quickly just going through and dotting up very lightly between those lines, because it just makes it a little bit more readable, and it gives me something. If I'm scanning this into a VTT, it gives me something to set my grid to. So we make sure all the tokens are in the right place. That actual gridding will be done set differently on the stone tiles. I'll probably draw the tiles in, and I'll show you how to do that. But now I'm going to move on to a brush pen, because what I want to do is to start to shade that water in. Again, because I'm trying to improve the readability of it as water. And I'm going to use a couple of different shades of brush pen, because obviously I can use the shading here to communicate the different depths of water in this particular chamber. So where I think it's deepest, that's where I start. And then I use a slightly lighter one towards the edges, towards where the island is, and towards the shore. And then I use a black brush pen. I do this to all of them. I scud up the edges of the room. Again, it's about showing where the walls are a little bit more clearly. So I add a kind of bit of detritus all the way around the edging of the room. And I do this to every single room. I wanted to go back and just quickly check what shading I'd use against the walls. Now, you could use isometric lighting to make it look like the light is coming from one direction, but I don't like doing that. I just use a brush pen, a lighter one, that's kind of grey, and just go all the way around the outside. Again, picking out that wall, maximizing the readability and the usability at the gaming table. Now I've done the cave system, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the exact same thing for every single other section. I like to break up the tiles and the kind of like the paving slabs, which are going to be 10 feet squares. I draw them across and then I add cracks to them. And then all I'm going to do is do the same, add that detritus, and then add the shading afterwards, just again to continuously improve the readability of the map. That's the key thing here, readability. I shade all the doors again to make those seem a little bit separate, and I start to work my way through the features of the rooms, doing exactly the same there. Now, I wanted to do some runestone kind of traps. They're mentioned in the previous video. So I had to stop and print out what were some different runestones from the Viking period, the Norse kind of like period would have looked like, and add them to the map. And then I'm going back and doing my secret room. And that's it. That is the drawing of the map finished. It's fairly straightforward, no special skills, just a couple of pens that I bought from WH Smith's, which is kind of like a standard stationer's in the UK. You can get brush pens and kind of like varying nib drawing pens at any kind of stationer's. And then I need to scan that in. So I scan it into the computer and I open it up in a program called Paint.net. It's free kind of image editing software, and it supports transparency. That's what I like, and it supports layers. So here it is in Paint.net. Now it's scanned in upside down. So first of all, let's just turn it the right way. And then what I'm going to do is just cut out the section that I need. I just need to rotate it slightly because it's not scanned in kind of exactly how I want it to do. So just rotate it ever so slightly, a couple of degrees. And then I'm going to just take the section of the map that I actually want and put it into a kind of new copy. And then what I want to do is I want to get rid of those old grid lines. I'm going to use brightness and contrast. I'm going to just turn up the contrast slightly. And what that will do is it'll retain all those cracks I drew and all those lines I drew, but it'll get rid of the gridded line. Then I'm just going to use a pen to just brush out any kind of other imperfections, or just a kind of a standard white. And that's actually the map pretty much ready to go. It's looking good. But I also, obviously, I need to do all the labeling. I'm going to make two copies of the map. I'm going to make one with no labels that you can use on a VTT. Here. All I'm doing is getting rid of that mistake where I added the hatching on the inside of a niche rather than on the other side of a secret door. Um, so, it's a good opportunity to fix any problems like that. I'm going to make two copies of this map. One for players, which has nothing on it that I can use on a VTT, and then 1 for GMs. And I just want to add all the rooms. Now I'm going to actually put the room numbers on in white, and I'm going to kind of shadow them in a kind of blue. And the reason I'm doing that is because it hugely improves the readability. It means that it prevents confusion if I make them white and then put the blue outline around them. It makes them much more readable. And there we go. There's our 11 rooms labeled. Just going to quickly do the arrows. So obviously there's an overland map that goes with this. I'm going to label those up in exactly the same way. There's 2 arrows that need to go on for the 2 entrances. And I also want to label for prospective game masters to make it really, really easy to use. I'm going to label up the areas outside that they lead to. There we have it. So all I need to do now is just arrange those, put them next to it, nice and tidy. And then I am going to add the north marker. Makes it really helpful. It means you can use when you describe rooms, especially if you're a group that likes to map manually, they can map manually. If you can tell them, oh, you enter the room facing north, you enter the room facing east. It makes it a little bit easier. And it makes talents like intuitive orientation in Gem, which lets you know which way north is intuitively, really, really helpful. I keep that in black, but I'm going to make the title, I'm going to make that blue because that's becoming a kind of color that I like to use, and it's used quite a lot in the actual module description as well. So that is the map done. So that just about wraps up this session on drawing dungeons. Again, like last time, below you can find links to Balagrim's Barrow on drive-thru, along with a free copy of my rule set, Journeyman Expert Master, and some pre-generated characters for that system. So whether you found this useful or interesting, or you've just enjoyed sitting a while and listening, please like and subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'm Gary, and I'll speak with you again soon. Thank you.